You've tuned in to I Am Not a Number Live, the review show with Cardinal Sin and friends, where we review a different episode of The Prisoner starring Patrick Mcgoon. Each week, we discuss a different episode and its implications then and now. Follow along and make sure to catch the episode in our viewing order so you can be ready to ask questions and participate in the chat. New episodes premiere each week on Wednesdays from 3 to 5 Central. The show's surreal and political implications on the reduction of the individual to a number have an even more insidious impact today, as all of our information, phone calls, texts, likes, photos, and other data are harvested to be sold and turn us into product rather than consumers. Get ready for a deep dive into one of the most important shows to have an impact on pop culture and society ever. And remember, I am not a number. Welcome, welcome, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin. And this is I Am Not a Number, number 18. And I can't do this alone. So let's bring in Rick the Unmutual and Tracy Torme. Greetings.
Hi. Great to be with
buddy.
you.
Good to see you guys again.
How are you guys doing?
This is the type of day that everyone should be in California.
It's really nice out, huh?
Sitting on my porch. Oh my God, it's not only perfect temperature, a nice breeze, but I can hear birds for like 1,000 miles. They're just chirping in all the trees, and it's pretty amazing.
Cool. And
it almost makes it worthwhile. Go ahead, sorry.
How have you been, Rick? We haven't seen you for a couple of weeks.
I'm afraid it's not the weather for sitting outside here in Wales, I'm afraid. It's pretty cold and wet and windy, but
you knew that when you went there.
I would, yeah, exactly. You don't move to Wales for the weather. I'm in the middle of nowhere, so it's all very nice. We've got the birds and the wildlife, and wouldn't change it for anything. I'm very well. I'm very interested to see what you two made of the episode.
Michael Beacom is here and says, greetings, Cardinal Sin and chat. Something about the way you say, I am not a number 18, just hits my funny bone. Darius Munchausen is here, and he says, welcome back, Rick the Unmutual and Tracy Torme. And Michael Beacom also says, to Tracy Torme, I'll stack my local weather. It's 60 degrees in Nebraska. Very weird for us. And it's 57 degrees here in northeast Kansas. So
60 in Nebraska is hot for you guys?
For this time of year, it's very warm. Yeah, but during the early morning, it gets pretty chilly. So
I grew up in Los Angeles. And it has the most static weather you've ever seen. I mean, it's pretty much the same every day. And we don't get anything like storms or wind, really. And when we first moved up here onto the top of the mountain where we are here, first thing I noticed was how there's like a daily breeze. And it's so nice because I'm used to the most boring of weather. It's just invigorating. And so we pretty have a really nice, cool breeze every day.
Cool. That's awesome. That's why everyone moves there, I think.
Yeah. Not for the politicians.
The weather in Kansas is brutal. It's brutally hot and humid during the summer, and it's brutally cold during the winter. So I'm awaiting March with bated breath. And Michael Beacom says, at Tracy Torme, it It is 5 degrees with a negative 15 wind chill less than 7 days ago. That's usual for this time of year. 60 and sunny is not.
Wow. Yeah, we're pretty spoiled out here with the weather.
Right?
But we did have another earthquake the other day.
Oh, no kidding. How big?
Yeah. I think it was 4.4.
Oh, just a temblor, right?
Yeah, but we felt it. Pretty big jolt.
Did it rattle the windows?
That's another thing. LA is a lot more earthquake territory than where we are here. I grew up over the San Andreas Fault, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember in my house where I grew up, my dad had a gun collection, and he had it wired to the alarm system. And I can still remember when I was about 10 years old, I used to sleep on one bed in my room, and we had a big German Shepherd that slept on the other one. And I remember waking up in the morning. First thing I noticed was the alarm system was going off. Second thing I noticed was I was on the floor, and the dog had fallen from the other bed on top of me. So I woke up with the dog on top of me, the alarm system going off, and I was sure, my brain thought someone is trying to rob the house, and the alarm is going off. And I thought that for about a full second. And then I saw my dad at the doorway to my bedroom, and he was kind of like half laughing, and he was saying, "Son, relax, we're just having an earthquake." And I said, "Oh, is that all? Okay."
Yeah.
And that was a really big LA earthquake, I think from 1990. And we sort of got used to them after that one.
Wow, different world. Nothing like that in the UK, I'm afraid.
Right.
I'm pleased to say.
Right. So should we start diving into the episode?
I think we probably should. Just before we do, though, I wanted to let everybody know, and I will do my best to at least get my mods to remember to share this link at the end of the show. But this is the link to the watch party next week, which will be Colony 3, and that'll be on Cosme, and that'll be streaming from my computer, and that is the prototypical episode of Danger Man for The Prisoner, and we're going to start at 2 p.m. Central instead of 3, so everybody, no matter what time zone you live in, just go 1 hour back, and we'll have this link here in the chat. And if for some reason there's an issue with the link, then I will create a new one and post it before the show, so you can come here to the Cardinal Sin channel, and I'll have another I Am Not a Number link that you can go to, and we'll all be able to watch that together. So then as soon as we're done, we'll be able to come back at 3 o'clock local time, and we'll all be able to talk about Colony 3.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. I'm especially looking forward to Tracy seeing it, because I think I'm right, Tracy. You've never seen Danger Man or Secret Agent, so this will be your first experience of the series.
Torment!
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I can't wait for you to watch it, because I think John Draco plays in Danger Man is a great character, and it's a great series. And this is a really interesting episode because it is, as Cardinal Sin said, something of a precursor to the Prisoner.
I can't wait.
When I saw it initially, I thought, oh, this is obviously the prototype for The Prisoner. And I was happy that I was right, but there are also other episodes that could be contenders for that, right, Rick?
Yeah, there's a few episodes which I think all contribute to Mcgoon coming up with The Prisoner. So the very first episode of Danger Man was set in Port Merion. And I know that when Patrick went there to film that for Danger Man, he saw the place and immediately a little light bulb went off in his head that this is a fantastic place for anyone to be in solitude and to be isolated. So that was in his mind. And that was 1959 that he filmed that there. So it was in his mind at that point. And yeah, there are several episodes where there are little kind of, sort of way out themes and so on, which do find their way into The Prisoner as well. So it's a great series for anybody to get into. And, I can't wait to hear what
Rick,
Tracy...
Rick, do you know how Johnny Rivers got to sing the theme song? Is there any story behind that?
Well, that's a very interesting question because there's a very interesting line in that song where it says they've taken away, they're giving you a number and taken away your name, which of course is
right.
kind of very accurate to the Prisoner. I think I don't know the story behind how he got to sing the theme tune. I'll look into that and I'll get back to you next week, Tracy. I'm sure I have
Fantastic.
something.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that for next week. But that's a good point.
Thank you.
I think the words of the song are coincidental to The Prisoner. So although it sounds as though it's a clue, I don't think it is one. I'll look into that, Tracy. I'm sorry I don't have the answer right offhand, but I will look into that certainly.
That'd be great. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. I may even do, while you're chatting, a little bit of reading on it while you're chatting.
Okay, great. Well, in preparing to talk to you guys about this episode, I was thinking back on this show in particular that we're doing together. It was really kind of a perfect fit for me because as much as I love The Prisoner, and I've said many times over the course of my career that I love Prisoner, I have not overwatched The Prisoner. I actually, because maybe it's partly what is aired in LA compared to other places, but it's, it has not been aired very much. So there were some episodes that felt very new to me. And then there were others where I knew things that were going to happen. But interestingly enough, knowing about the pressure that was on Mcgoon for the last 2 episode payoff, and he actually was very candid with me about all the flack that he took over it. I found out when I watched these last 2 that I really did not know them that well. I mean, what I very much remembered for some reason was pulling the mask off the being at the end, and it becomes the missing link or the ape or whatever. That stayed with me a lot. I knew that was coming. But there's a lot of other stuff in it, like the moon rocket shooting off in the background and lots of things that I really felt like I was seeing it for the first time. Now, all I really remembered, because Patrick had really told me about all the pressure that was on him to pay it off. I remember being very puzzled by it when I first saw it, but a lot of the images did not really stay in my memory. So it kind of felt like I was watching it for the first time. I did remember that I made a note to myself, wow, this gets weird. And I had to warn my wife, who's been watching this with me, get ready, because if you don't understand some of this,
this is going to be surreal as hell.
As surreal as it gets.
Yeah.
And I actually felt a sense of inadequacy because there was so much of it that, if I'm going to really be honest, that I did not get, that just left me very puzzled. And I was trying, I was trying really hard through the whole thing to think, Tracy, whether you get it or not right now, there is a reason for it. It will make sense, straight from Mcgoon himself. So just hang in there and don't get too frustrated at having so many moments of just kind of shaking my head and going, what? And so as we go into this discussion today, to be honest, there was a lot of it that, even when I was trying to think subliminally or surrealistically, that I did not get. I mean, I literally sometimes would lean back in my chair and say, what the hell did he mean by that? What was that all about?
Mm-hmm.
One thing
Tracy,
in particular that comes to, yeah.
Just to quote The Watchman, that means only that you are still sane.
Oh, what a relief. That's good. I thought I'd lost my mind.
No, everybody loses their mind watching this episode.
I could become the biggest pest in the world to Rick in this discussion because there's probably a million questions I'd like to ask him.
That's why he's here, Tracy.
Yeah. One thing that struck me right away, I'm a huge Beatles fan, so I'm always attracted to anything I see that involves the Beatles. And I'm kind of curious, Rick, was there any particular reason that he chose All You Need Is Love? He must have, but why?
Yeah.
And it must have been very expensive to get the rights.
Well, you say that. It actually, there's a story behind this, and it was actually, they actually paid £50 for lifetime in perpetuity rights to the song, which is no amount at all. It was all down to a chap called Eric Myville. Eric Myville was music editor on the Prisoner series, and he had used the Beatles' music previously on another show. And Patrick was looking for something which he felt wouldn't date the series. So Eric suggested the Beatles and said, his exact words were, "They've never let me down yet." And Patrick liked the Beatles because he felt they were fresh and they were new. So he said to Eric, he said, "Will this? If I use anything?" They hadn't decided on the song at that point. They said, "If I use something by the Beatles, will it date?" And Eric said, "Well, look, they're your best bet. If you want something that's going to be, live long for decades in the future, the Beatles are probably your best choice." So they thought, right, well, now we need to choose a Beatles song. So Eric said, "Well, whatever you want to do, I'll arrange it, the publishing rights, because that's my job as the music editor. I'll sort that out." And he thought, well, this is for a scene where people are machine gunning each other. Let's make it ironic and have All You Need Is Love. So we'll have All You Need Is Love playing out while people are being massacred with machine guns, because that's the irony of it all.
That is
how it
crazy.
came about. Eric suggested the Beatles. Patrick said, "That's great. I love the Beatles. Will it date the show?" Eric said no. Eric paid £50 for the worldwide rights in perpetuity. That's why when you buy the DVDs, you still get that song and not some other song.
Right.
They had the rights forever. And Patrick said, "Well, we'll have this song because that would be the ultimate irony that everyone's being murdered and yet at the same time we're singing All You Need Is Love."
Love, love, love.
The only one
I have a quote here from the chat from Michael Beacom, who we always enjoy having in the chat.
Yes, I love always reading Michael's contribution.
And he says, "Rick, I got the link for pre-ordering Not a Number, the Patrick Mcgoon retrospective. If anyone here did not get that, please share the link for the chat. A great value, even with international shipping." And this is the link to which he was referring.
Thank you for the plug. Yeah, we did an event at Elstree Studios, which is a very famous place where Star Wars was filmed, Indiana Jones was filmed here in the UK, just outside of London, opposite where MGM Studios used to be, where The Prisoner was filmed. And we did an event there in 2018 where we had some people that had worked with Patrick. So we had Alvin Rakoff, the director, John Huff, the director, Actors Jane Merrow from The Schizoid Man and Vera Day from the film Hell Drivers, and Alex Cox, who famous director for Repo Man and Sid and Nancy, who didn't work with Patrick, but of course he's written a book about the show, which I think Cardinal Sin has a copy of there because he's referred to it on other episodes. And we filmed the event, so this is a DVD of people chatting about their thoughts about Patrick, and it's it's coming out on DVD, all in aid of Hope House Children's Hospice for terminally ill children.
Well, I'm in the midst of moving. I think I may have moved that to the new place.
Okay.
But I do have the link on your website here, which we don't want to do because that's the wrong thing to share. Let's stop sharing that.
Don't share your entire screen. Unless you're putting in your bank details, we can all look at that.
There we go.
Great, that's it. And there's a link there to pre-order the DVD.
Which I will certainly be doing. Damn the international shipping. And it does say down here at the bottom, click here to pre-order.
That's it.
Right there.
Yes, that's available through that website. There was a link on the Mutual for it as well.
Yep, that's where I got it.
Oh, good man. Good man. Very well organized. Well, thank you for the plug. I wasn't expecting a plug today. So much to talk about with this last episode. And Tracy, you are never a burden. The only problem is with Fallout is that some things just don't have answers. So I know what will happen. You'll have a load of questions and there won't be an answer to it because there's so much in the episode, which I think, and Patrick said this himself, and he may even have said this to you. The thing with the last episode is not to take everything literally as you see it on the screen. Some of it doesn't need to make any sense. So why is the rocket there? We don't know why the rocket's there. We don't know where it's going. We don't know what it's for.
I will say this, Rick.
And there was no answer to that.
It seemed really odd to me that, he said, Patrick said many times, I feel like we're going too fast. We're proceeding too quickly. I think we need to back off. He didn't want to use guns, and suddenly the final episode is just chock full of guns and murder and technology. It's really weird.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. He wanted it to be. He wanted it to be ironic that was, no matter what you do in life, sometimes you can't escape from where you are without resorting to the extreme.
Sometimes violence is the only answer.
Yeah.
Did Patrick ever step forward publicly and even attempt to explain some of these things? Or did he just leave it 100% up to the viewer?
Rick, I think I'll take this one.
Yeah, go for it.
There's an interview in the documentary In My Mind, which I recommended to you before, and I sent you a copy of, but I may have gotten your address wrong because you didn't get it. It's also on the special features of the 50th anniversary Blu-ray, and it's a documentary where a couple of guys, I think in 1983, tried to film a documentary with Patrick Mcgoon about The Prisoner, which he quickly took over directing and made life kind of hell for these guys. And then they basically had to take the footage that they got and turn it into, I think, ITV. And then he created his own documentary and I think used the questions that they asked him or something like that to answer, to make it look as if he was being interviewed, but of course he was just acting. And he sent that to ITV for the same date. And needless to say, they didn't show his. They showed the one that the two guys had put together. Rick, did I get that right?
Yeah, more or less. It was Channel 4 actually, not ITV at that
Channel
point.
4.
But that's exactly right. He didn't like the way that they put together their version of the documentary. He particularly didn't like interviews they'd done with George Markstein and other people that had kind of contradicted Patrick's own views. So yeah, he made his own version of the documentary, being questioned by his daughter actually. Sent the tape off, but they didn't show that. They showed their own version, and yeah, Patrick wasn't happy about that. But this In My Mind documentary shows you all the different versions, so you can get all the, you know, the sort of the definitive answers from Patrick Mcgoon. To answer your question, Tracy, he explained some of it, but some of it will forever remain unexplained. For example, the rocket isn't particularly has never particularly been explained as to why it's there or what it is, and that's kind of up to people's own interpretation. But I think the things that are key to the story and key to the episode, I think we do understand. I think you did the right thing in that if something baffled you, I think you did the right thing in thinking, well, I'm not going to let this affect my overall view. I'm just going to let that one pass, and then I'm going to continue. And I think that's how you have to do it, because otherwise, every 5 minutes you'd be saying, well, I don't know what that's about, so I'm going to get, you know, you'd end up burying yourself in a hole and thinking, I can't get past it to enjoy the thing as an entirety. Whereas I think if you do say to yourself as you're watching it, I'm not going to bother about the little bits, as long as I kind of understand the general allegory of what's happening, then that's enough for me. And if you do that, I find it a more enjoyable experience than watching it and thinking, okay, well, why are they there? Who's that guy? And why is he there? You just end up with 100 questions that you will never get an answer to. You know, we don't know who, you know, we've got the Alexis Canna character, number 48. We don't know why he's there. We don't really know who he is. All we need to know is that he represents youth being rebellious. That's all we need to understand. I think if we start to go into the nuances of it, I think we just end up becoming confused. I don't think Patrick wanted that. I think he wanted people to have questions and to question what they were seeing. But I think they overall felt that people should be able to understand the underlying message. So not necessarily understand every scene and every nuance and every aspect of the performance and understand why every prop was there and what was happening. I think he just wanted people to understand the underlying theme. And you certainly understood it, because he wouldn't have given you more than 5 minutes in his company if you didn't understood it. So you clearly did for him. And I think that's what you should take from the episode. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but I think the problem with this episode is so much doesn't have an answer, and it's just up to your own interpretation of what you think it means. The problem that you might have is that you might think, well, I'm not sure I have an interpretation because there are so many confusing aspects. I'm not sure I can make anything from it. And that's perfectly valid as well.
And Michael Beacom from the chat has a message here that says, Mcgoon's wisdom in not filling in all the blanks is shown in that we still watch and debate the ending of The Prisoner, while shows with mystery arcs but lesser writers are not. Lost, Fringe, etc. I will say this. I really love Fringe. I think Fringe is great. I can't stand any of Lost. I tried to get into it twice. My friend on YouTube, Doomcock, rages against it because it's written by the cinematic Antichrist, J.J. Abrams, and that they had no plan at all. And after, I think he watched it for 6 years, when they had the last episode, he was furious, and many others were as well. Hail to Cosmic Squirrel, glad to see that you're here. Herc 130 is here. Can't contribute to the chat. I will listen to the show. Hurrah for the Bluetooth earbuds. So glad to see everybody here. And please continue.
One thing I was thinking about our discussion about the Beatles, I was sort of racking my brain and thinking, if they were just going to use one Beatles song, what would be the perfect one for this series? And although I totally understand what you were explaining about that song playing underneath the machine gun killing scene, the first one that came to my mind, and I wonder if people agree with me about this, would be Strawberry Fields. To me, Strawberry Fields is surrealistic enough, and it's enough about going into the recesses of your mind that I think
that
that would have
been
been
a
a
great
perfect
choice.
choice.
Yeah, I totally agree. So much of the Beatles. The Beatles were big fans of The Prisoner and actually did contact Mcgoon at one point to maybe work with them on something. There was discussion that the Beatles might do some sort of version of Lord of the Rings with Patrick Mcgoon. Never went any further than just having a conversation.
Can you imagine Patrick Mcgoon as Gandalf?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, he was offered the part of Dumbledore in the Harry Potter films, actually, and turned it down, which is a kind of similar wizard type character. But I think the
one
Beatles
thing I'd like
were
to
brilliantly together. It's a shame they never did.
One thing I'd like to share with you guys and see if you agree with me. For me, the Beatles are the only time in history that I can think of where the greatest was also the most popular. When has that ever happened any other time?
No, I don't think it has. I think you're absolutely correct. I would totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. And
Greg 2600 says, I finally made it to a live stream with Mr. Torme.
Oh.
Howdy.
Welcome, Greg 2600. You have fans, Tracy.
I wish you could feel the weather the way it is here. I wish I could share it with all of you. It's kind of one of those days where you could say, oh, it's a really nice day, isn't it? But you could also say, boy, the weather is one of those spectacular days that really only come a few times a year wherever you are, because it's not warm, it's not cold, the breeze is beautiful, the birds are singing, the sky is bright blue, and we actually overlook the ocean out here too. We can see the ocean on clear days. And you guys all know Tracy, Catalina Island, right?
When I come to the writer's room to the continuation of Sliders, I'll house up in your outbuilding.
Yeah, you're welcome to. We'll get a cot ready for you right now.
Cool.
Now, Tracy, I have some information for you. I've been doing some digging, and I found the answer to your secret agent man question that you had earlier.
By the way, I wanted to mention.
I'm not going to get.
Thank goodness that Johnny Rivers did that, because Devo covered it and does an amazing job.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Mark Mothersbaugh did all the music on the first season of Sliders.
Yeah. Interesting coincidence, huh?
Okay,
yeah,
so,
he was a good guy.
Okay, so I've got here a paperback book called Danger Man, a complete production guide by Andrew Pixley, which came with a DVD set. So I shall just read to you. Basically, Danger Man had been a set of half-an-hour episodes, and it was shown in the States under the title Danger Man in the early 60s. There was then a 3-year gap, and they then came back and thought, we're going to make some more Danger Man. This time they'll be hour-long episodes. Let's see if CBS will buy these. CBS decided to buy it, but they wanted to repackage it. Hence, they retitled the series to be called Secret Agent. Now, Johnny Rivers had been enjoying some success at that point, and he says that we were in London in 1964, and my producer Lou Adler met the producers of the show, which was big in Europe and was about to be broadcast in the US. They asked if we could come up with a theme song. So staff writers Phil Sloan and Steve Barry came up with a single verse and chorus as requested by CBS, but they'd never seen the show. And they say, we were just trying to write something that fitted what we were told the show was like. They said it was a TV version of James Bond. It's British, not so much action, but it's pretty intelligent, a real spy kind of thing. We wanted to come up with a guitar hook for the beginning, which I think they did a brilliant job of, since the Bond theme also had a guitar hook. Now, at that point, they didn't know it was going to be called Secret Agent Man. So the original chorus was actually, look out, danger man, think fast, danger man, and it would be accompanied by a female backing chorus. CBS then decided to change the title of Danger Man to Secret Agent, so then they had to change the lyrics of the song from Lookout, Danger Man to Secret Agent Man, because it obviously fitted the right amount of syllables. So that's how it came about.
And the whole they've given you a number and taken away your name.
Completely coincidental. That was just something they thought would fit the spy genre.
One thing that people will tell you that I say a lot is that everything happens for a reason, causality. That's a little joke.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you guys before, but my dad actually covered the song, which is really anyone who knows anything about my dad's career would not expect him to be doing that. But he did do an album in the 60s with all kind of 60s music. Believe it or not, he did the famous Donovan song of Sunshine Superman. He did that, and there are all kinds of, there's Simon and Garfunkel, and then he does one Beatles song, She's Leaving Home, and he actually did a cover of Secret Agent Man. And really, I can tell you guys, the only reason he did that is he always had a big admiration for Mcgoon. He liked Mcgoon going way back into early movies. And when I think you mentioned to me, Rick, or maybe it was Gil that mentioned that Mcgoon was a big jazz fan. I'd never known that. But I did know when I did meet him, he seemed to have a real reverence for my dad. And it probably was a good reason why he opened up to me so much. If you ever want to get a laugh, my dad's Secret Agent Man is actually available out there on, I think, YouTube and Apple Music and Spotify and that kind of stuff. And it's a pretty faithful, interpretation. And it really honestly came from his interest in Mcgoon. And I should have, of course, said that to Mcgoon when I met him that day, but I was just so overwhelmed that he was opening up so much on The Prisoner. And remember, when I was set up to meet with him, I sort of didn't think it was ever going to happen. And when it did happen, I was more surprised than anything. So I just wanted to take advantage of having the time to ask him some of the questions I had always wanted to ask. But looking back now, I should have done a much better and more thorough job of it. But we hadn't done this show yet.
It occurs to me, Tracy, that if we could get a George Harrison song instead of a Beatles song, that would be more specific to the je ne sais quoi of The Prisoner, it might be I, Me, Mine.
Yeah, I never liked that song that much, but I guess you're technically right. It would make sense. But now, I think from what Rick said in the past, I think George Harrison was pretty open about being very fond of The Prisoner, wasn't he?
He was, and he spent his 50th birthday in Portmeirion. If you watch the Beatles anthology film, the interviews done with George are in the hotel building in Portmeirion. He loves Portmeirion. The Beatles went there, and one of the cottages called Gatehouse in Portmeirion, the wardrobes in one room were designed by Brian Epstein, who was the Beatles manager. Brian Epstein spent a lot of time in the early 60s in Portmeirion. John Lennon went there, stayed there as well, undercover. No one knew he was there, but George Martin stayed there a lot. And George Harrison's son, Darnie Harrison, is in a band called The New Number Two.
The New Number Two,
Really?
I have both his albums and his solo album.
Wow, I've heard that.
Rick, you were saying?
Yeah, just saying. There's a lot of connections between the Beatles and The Prisoner. And it's amazing. You were saying earlier on about the Beatles were the only time where the best has also been the most popular. It's amazing when you think about it. From their first album to their last album, it was only 7.5 years. But yet it feels like they had such an impact. It feels like 20 years worth of material, doesn't it? But yet 7.5 years ago was 2014, no time at all ago. But yet in their 7.5 years, they created so much steps forward.
Yeah.
In music.
True.
You know, they created so
You
many
know what?
new ideas.
The other interesting thing is the Beatles were so prolific that people can have their favorite period of time, and there were so many good songs from that period. I mean, personally, sort of the Rubber Soul Revolver time is my favorite time, but
me too.
Other people might like the Sgt. Pepper's time, or the early Beatles when they were turning out slightly more simplistic songs, but they were still such good songs. And, you know, the Abbey Road days and blah, blah, blah. Because I actually had a good friend the other day who said to me, someone asked me the other day what my favorite rock band was. And he said, I said The Who, and I can't even think of anyone else that compares with them. I said, yeah, if you think a band that wrote, 20 or 30 good songs, you're right. But if you're talking about a band that wrote over 100 good songs, that's the Beatles.
Yeah.
In fact, the only one that I can really think of that compares with how prolific they were, in a slighter way, was Bob Dylan. Because I think Bob Dylan, again, did not put out the number that the Beatles did. I mean, the number of songs and periods that they excelled in, I just don't think there's anyone that compares.
No, I agree with you.
That's why I sort of like that.
It's amazing that in just 7 years, as you said, they created so many different eras, which are completely different to each other. If you listen to Hard Day's Night, and then listen to Abbey Road, and then listen to Rubber Soul or Beatles for Sale, you've got almost four completely different bands, aren't they? And that's astonishing.
Yeah.
There's no other artist I can think of where, if you listen to The Who in 1964 and then listen to The Who in 1969, there's not a great deal of difference in style. They kind of went with the era a little bit. The 70s, a bit more organ and so on, and became a bit more avant-garde. But yeah, the Beatles are far beyond anything else. Led Zeppelin, maybe you could.
I think the Beatles. I mean, for me, the Beatles are a one-of-a-kind band that were in the right place at the right time. Their first drummer, Pete Best, wasn't very good, and their first bass player, Stuart Sutcliffe, was so bad that he turned around when he was on stage and gave his back to the audience when they were in Hamburg. And so when they came back, Paul was playing the bass, and their drummer, they got the best drummer in Liverpool, Ringo Starr, who is probably one of the most underrated drummers in history.
I always loved John Lennon's quote, though, Gil. I always loved John Lennon's quote when someone said, is Ringo the greatest drummer in the world? And his reply was, he's not even the greatest drummer in the Beatles.
Right. Of course he would say that.
Yeah. Well, I know this is getting off the subject a little bit, but did I tell you guys the story of when my dad met John Lennon?
No, you didn't.
I don't think so.
Oh, it's really a hilarious story. Gil, you're the thumbs up or thumbs down. It's a minute
Go
or
for
two long. Is it? Okay. So my dad had become pretty well known for not seeming to be an aficionado of rock music. And my dad had simple reasons for it, because he was just raised with these jazz chords, and he felt that a lot of the rock that he heard were just 3-chord songs, and he found them to be very simplistic. So he had been quoted in various places much more than he should have, to be honest, because it was not a smart thing to do. But he would often criticize people like Elvis, and he would. When you criticize Elvis, you're not going to meet a lot of happy people out there. So one day, my dad's in St. Louis, of all places, and he's performing at a hotel there. So he's doing a promotional show in the morning to promote the show, like Good Morning St. Louis type of show, right? So he's doing the show, and someone unexpectedly says, well, Mel, you're pretty famous for not liking rock music. My dad had not expected this question, but he said, is there anything you want to say about that? And my dad again gave a very questionable answer, to be really honest. He said, well, so many kids today admire rock musicians so much. And the only real problem I have is there's all these drug lyrics. He goes, I just don't think it's a positive thing to be promoting drugs in a song or in a conversation.
Do you remember how scandalous it was when Paul McCartney went to Japan and they busted him for pot? It made the news all over the place.
Right. Totally right. So my dad goes, for instance, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Because everyone knows that's about LSD. Of course that's about LSD. No one can deny it. That's all it's about. Goes, listen to the lyrics sometime. It's about taking acid. So my dad finishes his interview, goes back to his hotel, and he's getting in the elevator later. And who comes walking into the elevator but John and Yoko, who just happened to be in St. Louis at that time. And John immediately goes at my dad, like sticking his hand out at him and going, you're Mel Torme. You're Mel Torme. I just saw what you said today. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is not about LSD. It never was. And you're totally wrong. And then my dad looks over. Yoko, according to the way my dad tells the story, Yoko comes up and starts poking my dad in the chest with her index finger. And she's saying, you a bad man, you a bad man, you a very bad man, you're a very bad man. And my dad manages to get out of the elevator alive. And then what I just heard the other day that put this thought back in my head is apparently there's a new YouTube of the old Dick Cavett show, the late night show. And
John Lennon and Yoko were regular guests.
Well, get this. There's now that video of John Lennon telling the same story from his point of view and what he experienced running into my dad in the elevator. And I thought, oh my God, that's hilarious. I haven't watched it yet, but I definitely plan on it because that story was sort of legendary around our house. And now to hear that John Lennon is actually talking about it, I can't wait to see that. So if anyone's curious, it is out there now.
I'm going to check that out too. I'm interested to see how the other side of the coin comes over. Yeah. That's great. Thanks for that, Tracy. I love your stories. I could listen to you all day, mate.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, buddy. And I'll close it out with one final thing. I was originally heading toward being a singer-songwriter in my young life.
I didn't know
guitar
that.
and piano. Yeah. And
I think when he's your father, I think you were always going to start to go down that road. There's no way you couldn't have done with your parentage.
Yeah, but you know what happened, guys, honestly? I knew that nothing that I would create would ever be respected in my family household, where, by the way, both of my brothers are jazz singers.
Oh, cool.
Right now. And I knew it wouldn't happen. I had once told someone, if I want to end up on a psychiatrist's couch for the rest of my life, I would have continued with that. But my My dad once said something that I overheard him say. And it was at that moment I just decided, no, can't fight City Hall. I'm not even going to bother with it. My dad was mouthing off about something that he'd seen on TV. And now I'm sort of scared to say this to the audience because people will hear this and think, like I did, as my dad lost his mind. My dad one day was ranting in the house and going, "Oh, that no talent John Lennon." And I thought, oh, if you think John Lennon is a no talent, where am I going to end up? So I just decided almost at that moment to go and do something else.
I bet I know exactly what ran through your head, Tracy.
I will not make any deals with you.
I wondered if my dad had lost his marbles.
I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own.
Is it?
Yes, you won't hold me.
And one time, it was in the 60s, obviously, we went into the record store and I just insisted that my dad listen to some Beatles because I couldn't believe, as much as he knew about music, that he would not hear it for how exceptional it was. So I bought 2 albums that day, Sgt. Pepper's and Norwegian Wood. Not Norwegian Wood, the one Norwegian Wood was on, Rubber Soul. And I terrorized him for a while. I made him listen to both those albums. And he ended up covering She's Leaving Home, which is not the one that I would have chose, but it was the most palatable to his taste. But there were some songs that he had to admit were great. And I'm still, totally in that corner because I just think the Beatles were completely unique.
Yeah, for sure. And to be honest, the first band that I ever got an album of when I was really young, the guy across the street was going to buy a new version, a new record of Sgt. Pepper. And so he sold me his old scratched up one for 50 cents. So I played that on my little turntable, and I thought I invented air guitar because I was just totally, into it.
Yeah. Yeah, one last thing, and I'll shut up about the Beatles. I always thought it was really interesting that when George Harrison was first with the band, his songwriting skills were fairly minimal. I still like his songs. But just by being around Lennon and McCartney, just by being around those two guys, think of how far his songwriting advanced as time went on. It's definitely an argument can be made. I don't personally totally agree with this, but an argument can be made that by the time the Beatles were getting toward the end, he was writing just as well as Lennon and McCartney.
Yep.
I mean, he wrote some were considered not just the innovative stuff with the Indian music, which, I never would have listened to Indian music if it wasn't for the Beatles. And I like all the Indian stuff that he did. But, for writing stuff like Something, for instance, which, Bing Crosby once said he thought it was the greatest love song ever written, bar none. No, it wasn't Bing Crosby, it was Frank Sinatra. Sorry. Sinatra said that he had never heard a better love song ever. And by the time they were finished, instead of Harrison getting to squeeze one little song onto an album once in a while, he was coming up with masterpieces right next to the two of them. And I don't think that ever would have happened if he hadn't been around Lennon and McCartney.
I'm going to take issue with that, Tracy, because Lennon and McCartney bounced ideas off of each other quite often, especially when they were on tour. In their later period, they would each sort of write either a verse or a chorus or a hook, and then show it to the other, and then they would kind of create the song there. But the later in the day it got in their career, the further and further they were, apart. And I think that George Harrison, because he didn't have anyone to bounce, his ideas off of, just became an amazing songwriter.
Yeah.
And Michael Beacom mentions the John Lennon video is right here on YouTube. Just search John Lennon, Mel Torme, and Dick Cavett. It originally aired September 1971.
Wow. Did he sort of match the story I told?
According to Michael Beacom, that's available right there on YouTube. So,
no, I gotta check that out.
Yeah,
because I kind of grew up with that. I grew up with that story. I used to actually think I actually had some doubts that the story could be really true, the same way my dad told it. Because the way my dad told it, he kind of snapped back at Yoko, and he got like the last word in to Yoko as he exited the elevator. And I wonder if that's just the way my dad remembers it, or if that's what really happened.
Interestingly, in just a bit of piece of information that you might not know, in Fallout, at the beginning when they're walking down the corridor of jukeboxes and the Beatles music starts to come out, originally they were going to have lots of different songs. As you went down the corridor and hear one song on the left, and then there'd be a different song on the right. So they were going to have Puppet on a String by Sandy Shaw, and they were going to have a song called Little Boxes, and then they were going to have the Beatles. I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm glad that they just went with All You Need Is Love, because I think it worked really well. And it is one of those timeless songs. Everybody knows it's the Beatles. Everybody knows the words to the song. If they'd have chosen some random 60s hits, I'm not sure we'd still be talking about them 55 years later.
The irony of All You Need Is Love during that scene in The Prisoner is completely surface level,
Yeah, you're right.
With all the guns going off and everything, and everybody being murdered.
And the lyrics so obviously black and white.
Yeah.
To play All You Need Is Love. Seems to me that, Rick, do you agree with this? Seems to me that it was another one of Mcgoon's ways of showing pretty sharp, advanced sense of humor. It seems to me absolutely. Like Mcgoon would have thought in his head, oh, that would be the perfect song while they're shooting each other with the machine guns. I mean, it's so much sort of a...
absolutely. Absolutely. It was. He thought it was terribly ironic, and Alexis Canna tells the same story. He played the kid in the last episode, and then he turned around to Mcgoon and said, "What the hell? Why have you chosen this song?" And apparently Mcgoon just said, "Well, there's the irony," and then he chuckled to himself. So, you're absolutely right that this was that was Mcgoon's doing, and I think you said you had some other questions as well about the final episode, Tracy. I'd love to help as much as I can. I can't guarantee I'll have all the answers.
Yeah. Well, I would say, Rick, pretty much open season, because I didn't see a lot in that I fully understood. And I also think, based on what he told me, that there was so much pressure on him, because the way the press used to work in those days, and I'm old enough to remember those days, I had a good point in my mind. I mean, it was the big question that was going around that summer was, wow, what's it finally going to be? Who's number one finally going to be? Why was he taken there? Does he ever escape? Does he ever find out where the place is located? All of those things, primarily, I think the number one question.
The thing, Tracy, that
You're right, Tracy. There was a lot of pressure on him to answer all the questions, and all the viewers wanted to know the answers to those questions. But I think it's to his credit that he didn't put it all on a plate and didn't say, well, it was this Bond villain at the end, and well, he escapes and he
to his volcano lair.
It turns out the village was, in Germany or Russia or whatever. I think we're here 55 years later talking about it because he made it all a bit ambiguous. We do know that the allegory is that number one is the worst side of yourself, and that the enemy is yourself. We know that he did escape, but yet he didn't, because his door of his house opens automatically at the end, which says to us that he hasn't escaped. None of us ever escape. We're all constantly imprisoned by the life that we find ourselves in. So we do have some answers, but it's all not put out on a plate. And I think that's what he wanted. He wanted people to be talking about this. He wanted people to switch the TV off at the end of the episode, turn to the husband and go, what was that all about? And then the husband to say, well, I think that was about that. And the wife would go, no, it's about that. And then have a conversation about what it all means. And it almost doesn't matter whether the wife and the husband have completely different viewpoints, as long as they take something from the series.
Tracy, I'm really interested in what Robin thought after you'd finished the episode.
Yeah, I had a thought of bringing her on the show, and then I thought, well, I know Robin. She's just gonna say that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I mean, it didn't make any sense. I didn't understand it. I mean, I know that's how she feels about it. But I'm sure there were a lot of people back in the day that first saw this episode, and I can see why a lot of them were angry, because it kind of reminds me, Mark Zicree, right, Gil?
Say again?
You know Mark Zicree, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I had him on, with you and once before. Yeah.
Right. Well, we used to talk, Mark Zicree wrote the Twilight Zone companion book.
Mm-hmm.
And before he worked on Sliders. So I knew him actually through the Twilight Zone world before I knew him from Sliders. But we used to talk about the Twilight Zone a lot. And I sort of had this theory that when the Twilight Zone episodes were just, here's where something weird happens. The man is walking down the alley, and suddenly the alley starts to rain, but it rains fish or something like that. I say, if it's that type of a Twilight Zone episode where it's just, here's where the weird thing starts, I felt like it didn't work as well. That it worked much better when they had some far out concept, but they were able to explain it logically, when something actually has a reality behind it. And I still believe that. And that's where I'm sorry to say that I realized what pressure Patrick was under, and I realized what a hard nut it was to crack, but I don't think it works. I really don't. I mean, it works in the sense that it is an answer, even if it may not be a very good answer, it's still an answer. You still do see, this is the moment you're going to see number one, and here's number one. That kind of stuff, is interesting because it's so out there and so surrealistic. But if you look at the last two episodes from start to finish, in my opinion, there are just too many things that have no answer. A perfect example, Rick, the moon shot that flies up over the island and flies off into the distance, which made Robin believe for a little while that the moon landing had something intrinsic to do with the show. And I just kind of shook my head at her and said, honey, I'm sorry, I don't think it does. I think it's just that it's an out there surrealistic image, but it doesn't really work because it doesn't mean anything. Nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And I was curious, Rick, to see whether you would say that, or if you were also going to say, yeah, here's why the moon landings are somehow tied into the overall plot of the show. there were so many things in the last two episodes where they really don't, in my mind, have any kind of a linear connection to the show itself, which maybe at other times that would be okay. But given that everyone knew these were going to be the two episodes that explained it, given that that's what everyone thought it was going to be, I think they really failed. And when I say they failed, I mean, I think Mcgoon was such a genius when it came to this show. He had any right to do anything he wanted to. He could have done the sinking of the Titanic in the last scene. And you could have said, well, it's in Mcgoon's mind, so it's okay. But answering those questions are like solving a riddle or answering a math equation or something.
A Zen cone.
In a way, you know what I'm saying. And in that sense, I don't think it works. And I even remember going back to my old thoughts about The Prisoner when I had only seen it once, and that was it. It hadn't become such a cult classic. I always felt they're meticulously setting up a bunch of riddles in this show, and are they ever going to be able to pay them off? And I was fervently hoping they would, but I don't think they did. So that's just my opinion.
It's so interesting. I always find it interesting that you really do have two ends of the spectrum when it comes to The Prisoner. Even people who love the show, so many of them don't like the final episode and don't like the finale. You're not alone, Tracy. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I thought it was the only possible way to have ended it. I think having any sort of ending where it was all there and all explained, I don't think would have worked. I don't think either of us are wrong. I think it's just that's what we personally take from it. I personally think the final episode is a work of genius because it's the reason we're still sat here 55 years later. And I think I agree with you that there are elements of it where you're sitting there thinking, well, why is that there? And he hasn't explained why that's there. But that doesn't bother me. I think you could say the same thing about practically every episode. You know, why are certain things there? Why does it need to be a penny farthing with a number in it? Why not just a number? All different things which don't need to be there. And if you analyze it to death, we don't find an answer as to why they're there. But I love the fact that everything, there's an underlying metaphor there.
If I came to you and asked you in the most simplistic terms, could you tell me what was the significance of the black and white masked people and the young man with the top hat? Well, I can honestly tell you, when I first started rewatching the show, I remembered how annoying he was to me. I just remember like, oh God, this guy's coming back again. He's annoying. That's the way I took it. Now, that's totally, individual. I mean, not that anyone else should feel that way. But he's back singing that Dem Bones song, and maybe I'm just missing the significance of that song.
It's like the nursery rhymes.
He's also on the very last episode, right at a critical time, as if he was like totally substantial to the prisoner, and he's really not to me. But you know what's weird? I'm actually hopeful that you said what you just said, because I still hope there is something there that I'm just totally missing. No one would be happier than me.
Yeah, in terms of that character, the reason that character's there and exists is that the point that Mcgoon was making there was that if you need a revolution, you've got to have the youth with you. Otherwise, there won't be a revolution. You've got to have the youth being the ones rebelling. There's no point us old fogies, Mcgoon was saying, in standing up against the governments and standing up against the system and saying, now look here, you've got to change. We can't live like this anymore. They're not going to listen to us old folk. Once the youth rebel, once the youth start that revolution, that's when the government start listening. So the point of that character played by Alexis Canner in Fallout with the top hat, it's Mcgoon saying, you've got to have the revolution from the kids. The kids have got to be with the old fogies and starting the revolution. That's what he's there for. The hooded characters are there basically to shout down Mcgoon. When he's giving his speech, they shout him down and just keep shouting, I. And the point of them being there is that no matter how individualistic you want to be and how much you want to stand up on a stage and say, this is what I think, you will be shouted down by the faceless bureaucracy that's in front of you. So that's why they're there.
And following up on your point and supporting it, the fact that they do that every time he starts his speech, it also means no matter what you do, no matter what you try, no one's really going to understand.
Absolutely. No one's listening.
So you might be speaking gibberish.
And I think also, Tracy, that
makes sense.
Maybe Rick will agree with me on this, that in Fallout, the final episode of The Prisoner, a part of it is to communicate that it doesn't matter who number one is, that number one is inside us. Exactly. And that in The Prisoner, in the show, number one was number six. And six of one, half a dozen of another. But that he really wanted people to think, and it was maybe the first water cooler television show where people would go off and talk about it and try and figure out what it meant. And actually, and again, Rick can back me up or blow me away on this, but it seems to me like the point of the final episode of Fallout is that it really, the only thing that it's supposed to do is open your mind. None of the things that happen in the episode really count, but if they make you think, that's the important part.
Don't take any scene or any prop or anything that happens in the last episode literally. You've just got to look at it all as an allegory. What do you think they mean by that? And what's interesting, Tracy, is that you said, I'm not sure I got a lot of it, but each time you speak about it, you absolutely nail it. You know, you say about the hooded figures shouting him down, and what does that mean? A minute ago, you said you didn't know what that meant, but you obviously do, because your last statement about them was absolutely spot on. I think you understand more than you think. I think you're trying to look too deeply into the nuances, and as Cardinal Sin just said, you don't need to do that. You just need to understand what the overall metaphor is, and the other bits and pieces just fit into the slots like a jigsaw puzzle. As you say, where was that rocket going? Does it matter? It probably doesn't matter, because you understand that it could have just as easily been a box instead of a rocket that they were in.
It's just something that's it's designed to make you think.
Yeah, but it doesn't actually have a meaning in itself.
It actually makes me feel better. And I really do feel better because
I wanted to display my favorite game is Fallout, but it's not got anything to do with The Prisoner.
I think that sounds like a nuclear thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, Tracy, you were saying you feel a bit better now?
Well, I was just going to say, what you're saying is reassuring to me, because I would much rather believe that it all does have meaning, and I sort of do get it, rather than think, oh, they just kind of struck out on this and decided we'll throw in this surreal image and this surreal image and this one, which is kind of where I was when I finished watching it yesterday. But a lot of what you said, Rick, does resonate. So I'm hopeful that believe it or not, I'm hopeful that I am missing it, not that it doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
There are some elements as well which can only be explained if you know the actual story of the production. So people that watch Fallout think, well, where did that big cavern come from? Why are they in that cavern? And then why is there a rocket there? We've got to bear in mind that this episode was filmed back to back with Girl Who Was Death, and they just were reusing the same sets. They didn't have time to build new sets. There was a set for a film called Battle Beneath the Earth, made at MGM in 1967. So they used that set for the end of The Girl Who Was Death. And then if you remember The Girl Who Was Death, he ends up in a lighthouse Well, the interior of the lighthouse is the interior of the rocket in Fallout. It's simply a case that they're reusing sets. So a lot of the surreal elements in it aren't necessarily, wow, they've created this big cavern. What does that mean? Is it trying to tell us that we're all underground? No, they were just reusing a set. So sometimes the production elements and running out of money and running out of time kind of create a lot of the mysterious aspects. But yeah, don't analyze every little thing. I mean, at the end, where did all those helicopters come from? All of a sudden, they're evacuating.
Oh
There's
my
20
God, yes.
in the sky. When we
I
know
was
the village only have one helicopter, So there are things that, yes, you can analyze to death and you'd never get a satisfactory answer. I would leave those little points aside and just look at it as a whole and think, do I understand what he was trying to say? Do I understand what message he had for me as a human being, as to how society is around me? If you think, yes, you did get an answer to that. If you think, yes, you did feel there was a message from him, then he succeeded. And it doesn't matter whether he failed at each individual's thing. If he got that message across to you, if you watched The Prisoner, and at the end of that 17th episode felt, okay, I feel he was telling me something about the world around me, then I think he succeeded. If people disagree with me on that, they're not wrong. That's just their opinion. I think he succeeded because he did get me to think about what was happening in the world around me by putting that episode together in the way that he did. And I don't think.
I think one point that you made.
If he just done it.
One point that you made.
Sorry.
One point that you made that, yeah, it really did resonate with me was that you could make a case that he didn't nail it at the end. But think of some of the other much poorer choices he could have made. I mean, he could have made more choices that were so blindingly surrealistic that they just fell off the table every single time. I would argue with you that he did make some of those, but you sort of made the point of, what else was he going to do? What else was he going to do to pay it off? And that may be the most accurate thing we've said today, because maybe this is a puzzle that doesn't really have an answer. I know that sounds like a bit of a cop out, but
I think
bingo.
I think there's a lot of merit in what you say, Tracy. Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit in that, Tracy, and I think that you could say that about life. And you're right.
It doesn't have to make sense.
If you ended it in either a more surreal way or a much more obvious way, and I don't think either of those two would have worked. So you're really left with the only choice he had, which was, okay, I'm going to put across a message. I haven't got much time. I haven't got much money. All I've got is a cavern set and the interior of a lighthouse. What can I come up with? In the 2 days I've got to write this thing, which is all he wrote it in 48 hours. What can I come up with here? I think he came up with something extraordinary that's got us talking for 55 years. If he'd just come up,
Rick, it's amazing he didn't have a heart attack.
We'd have forgotten about that. We'd have forgotten about this series in 1972.
He was working so hard at the end of that series, well, really throughout the whole thing, spending the morning writing and then spending the evenings in the editing bay. It's amazing he didn't have a heart attack. But I would like to mention this, a little bit of an aside. If you have any questions about what The Prisoner actually means, you really need to get a hold of The Prisoner, The Essential Guide by Rick Davey.
Oh, bless you. It's only it doesn't have all the answers, unfortunately. I wish I could write a bigger book, and I will do one day.
But another thing that I have to do, just a little housekeeping, because my mods will drive me crazy if I don't share the following, that the merch for I Am Not a Number, like this shirt, prices will be going back up to normal, and I wanted to share with you some of the things that we have available at gillstore.com. And of course we have the white coffee mug, the black coffee mug. We have the pullover hoodie. in some different colors. We have a very fetching pint glass, which
Gil, what's
isn't
on the
much.
white coffee mug?
The white coffee
Okay.
mug. Let's take a look. The white coffee mug says "I am not a number" on the front, and then has the URL for my channel on the back.
Okay, great.
And I also wanted to mention that there are some great t-shirts available. This one is my personal favorite, the one that I'm wearing now. And of course, these prices are just pennies above cost, as a thank you for being a walking billboard for my channel. But here in a couple of weeks, when we're done, those prices are going to go up. So we have all different sizes. We have all different, men's and women's and everything. So check that out. And I wanted to also show some things that people have been saying in the chat while we have been talking. Michael Beacom says, regarding Fallout, we have to remember that psychedelic films were in vogue in 1967. Surrealism was a current new frontier in pop culture, and I think Mcgoon was trying to plug into that. And my brother Ari says 100%. Brian Hepburn says, it almost seemed like a fever dream building up to the psychotic break. Greg 2600 said, Tracy has a writer's perspective, which I concur with. Over a longer run, Lost did the same, opened too many doors, and then lost track of them. And then he says the keys. Michael Beacom also says, Rick, regarding unexplained versus explained, my wife loves to contrast Close Encounters ending original, where we don't see inside the mothership, versus the special edition where we do, and it's a letdown. And he also mentions
sometimes it's better
regarding,
not to have answers. Funnily enough,
yeah.
do you feel, having watched all 17, Tracy, lately, do you feel frustrated by the ending, or when you view the series as a whole, do you still view it positively?
Well, I remember, first of all, definitely still view it very positively, largely because of its uniqueness. So yes, that hasn't changed at all. But I had remembered, thinking back on the series, that there seemed to be a consensus that they really kind of blew it on the last two episodes. And the reason that I say they blew it, because there was a real expectation built into the press to explain who's number one, blah, 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 and that they didn't succeed in that. So I did go into watching this again, feeling that, I told my wife, I said, I don't think you're going to like the last two. So this just enhanced it. But I think Rick makes a very cogent argument that what else could he have done? And at least he sort of took his shot at explaining something that's not explainable. If that's what you're saying, I kind of believe that that's correct. But, when I was in film school, they used to show us these sort of experimental...
You went to USC film school, right?
Right. And they used to make us watch these experimental films. There were certain directors in particular, I don't even remember their names anymore. But I thought some of them were such nonsense. So I ended up making one of my own, a student film. It was called what was the title? Ants, Insects, and Other Forms of Love. And what it was is just a series of random shots with the camera that a guy that got drunk all the time, he'd go out and get drunk and shoot different things like an ant crawling up the wall, or whatever. And then these film professors would fall over themselves saying how brilliant it was because the ant crawling up the wall actually represents blah, 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 blah. I always thought it was nonsense. So I did a very satirical film about it, which were obviously taking a shot at my film professors. So it goes all the way back to that for me, because I think a lot of times if things are, coated in enough surrealism and enough, nonsense, people will say that it's a genius piece of work. And what I was saying in film school is that it was just a director getting drunk and then lying on his back and shooting insects. So I've always been a bit unyielding on those kind of things. And I would have said before our talk today that I really think that a lot of it is just gobbledygook in the last two. But I think that Rick makes a compelling argument that maybe there was no answer to this, and maybe at least we should applaud the guy for trying to do something so strange, so off the wall. But to finally answer your question, I would have preferred it if there was something more tangible to where is this place? Why are these people brought to this place? Who is number one? Yeah, I would have preferred.
You're looking for resolution.
Yeah, I really am. And you know what? As to Rick's point, that may be totally unfair to even expect that. Because
I think it goes back to. I think it goes back to what. I'm trying to find who said it, but that you have a writer's perspective, a writer's mind, and you don't like to see any kind of a story that doesn't have, a nice bow tied around the ending. And I understand that, absolutely.
It feels a bit to me like a cheat. Yeah, it feels like a cheat. It feels like you've set up this incredible puzzle and you have no idea how to pay it off, so you just can't. You just come up with all kinds of...
the switchboard at the TV station went crazy after that, because everybody that had sat patiently for 16 episodes was incensed and wanted to know who is number one and blah, blah, blah. And the point isn't who number one is. The point isn't that it makes sense. If you'd wanted to do that, he would have just stuck with Danger Man. This was designed to be something that has an open-ended, episode that's designed to make you think about it. And like Rick said, we wouldn't be talking about it 55 years later if it didn't do that.
Well, of course, one way to look at it is to not view Fallout as the ending. It's to view. I'm really going to mess you up now. The way to view Fallout is not as the ending. You can view Fallout as the beginning. The series is cyclical. If you watch Fallout first and then watch Arrival straight afterwards, you get a completely new perspective on it all. Because obviously the very last shot of Fallout is the very first shot of Arrival, where he's driving down the runway in his Lotus. Well, there isn't an ending. There isn't a because he never escaped. Because none of us ever escaped. That's why his door opens automatically at the end of his house.
Let me throw one alternate idea that just popped into my mind since we watched this. If they had just taken that scene where he goes up to the one masked individual, and you're led to believe that's number one, and then he yanks it off its head, and it's Mcgoon himself, and he laughs at him and then covers himself up again. That, to me, would work. Because that would be like, what were they saying all along? What he kind of explained to me, that your number one is really number 6. If they had done that, that would have been enough tethered to reality for me that would have worked for me. But the fact that it's sort of like a missing link, part ape creature, what's he saying there? That we're all primitive, that we're all just beasts, maybe. But I think if they left it sort of with a cliffhanger where we got a quick glimpse of Mcgoon being number one, that would work a lot better for me. I mean, I would have argued for that heavily if I was on the show's staff. But what do you think of that, Rick?
I think there's a lot of merit in what you say about the delivery of what he's trying to say. Could he have delivered it in a slightly different way, as to still get his message across, but not make it so? I mean, it is blink and you miss it. And watching on black and white TV in 1967 or 68, rather, when that was first screened, if you just happen to look away to pick up your cup of coffee, you've missed that, haven't you? So I can understand where you're coming from. You're not wrong, and no one who dislikes the last episode is wrong. It's just whatever, if that's, I think a different thing from it. I'm not any more right than you are, and you're not any more right than I am. I think it's just whatever you enjoy from it. I can understand why people think the last episode's a letdown. It's not how I see it. I think it's genius, but that's that fine line, isn't it, between something being genius and something just being over enigmatic for its own sake, which I think is the point that you're making, in that he didn't need to add those extra elements. He could have just told that story in a much more sort of linear way, and it would have made a lot more sense, and he would have still had that underlying message that I've been sort of promoting about the series. But that's the reason that the remake didn't work, is that the remake was deliberately enigmatic, whereas I don't think Fallout is deliberately enigmatic. I think he's written that as a natural
The remake
process,
was just
and it just
absolute
happens to
garbage. The remake was just shit.
Horrible.
And I
As
think
great as
there's
The
a lot to be
Prisoner
said for the final episode being kind of, I am the monarch of the sea, the ruler of the Queen's Navee. It's saying that we are all number one. We are all prisoners, but we are also all jailers with the key.
Absolutely. The enemy.
What about
the enemy is always me.
The Dem Bone.
I am always my enemy. Always.
Dem Bone song. Did the Dem Bone song have any meaning to it, or was it just randomly selected song?
Mcgoon always claimed that he just liked the song, so he sent Eric Mivel off to find a good version of it. So he actually found, I think, 8 versions.
And it was in the public domain.
And it was by the Four Lads, the final version that was used. Mcgoon always says he just liked the song and thought it was an interesting song to use. People have tried to read into it about the religious aspects of it, about how, we're all, at the end of the day, we're all just flesh and bone and so on, and putting biblical references in. Mcgoon claims that he just liked the song and felt it fitted well as a song to kind of dance around to.
And Tracy, Michael Beacom in the chat here says, spoilers, in our basic psyche, yes, we are primitive, hence the ape. And it does give it away in the end. His door closes with the village servo motors, and there's a number 1 on the door.
And
so it was designed intentionally to be surreal, but also, as Rick is saying, to be cyclical, to show that this never ends. And what Mcgoon was saying to you when you guys spoke for a couple hours, and I think in the interviews and all the other things in which Mcgoon has been asked about the ending, it's what you take home from it. It's what does it make you think about,
Absolutely, that's the point I was making before. It almost doesn't matter what the intention was, as long as you take something from it. And if you take something that it wasn't what was intended, that doesn't matter, because you've still taken something from it. Whereas 99.9% of TV shows you take nothing from. it's just chewing gum for the eyes, isn't it?
Mhm.
Most
Yeah.
television, most film.
Especially
watch it,
if
oh,
we're
that's
looking
it.
at,
Yeah, great. And then that's the, whereas
especially
the
if we're looking
Prisoner
at
actually
TV
makes you
shows
think,
like
makes you think about
Lost,
what
shows that are written by people that were involved with Bad Robot or his other production company, I don't remember. Alias, people, are hot and cold on that. Lost, I tried really hard to get into that twice, couldn't do it. It sounds to me like just as well because people who are fans of Lost don't understand that the name of the show is the whole point of the final episode, that they're completely lost. I would like to also share this with you guys and with the audience, that I have gotten Freeman, and it is a Prisoner sort of a card game.
Oh, it arrived. That was the Kickstarter fundraiser, wasn't it, that you signed up for?
And the cards are just gorgeous. I'm going to turn off my light real quick. And so you can see we have one work unit. And things like that. And even the Freeman t-shirt is available, which I have right here. And that's, of course, available right here at theunmutual.co.uk. So please visit Rick's website for more information on the game and on the shirt. And I wear mine with pride. I'm looking forward to playing the game.
Let us know what it's like.
Great.
Cardinal Sin. I'd love to know if it works as a game, because I haven't got a copy, so I'm interested to if it actually works to be able to play this card game, and like that.
Well, the friend of mine that turned me on to The Prisoner is really into games, and I bought him one, and I bought one for me. They're not very expensive, and he was thrilled. He thought, oh, a card game, based on The Prisoner, what a great idea. So, yeah, it's a very cool looking set, and wanted to get that in there while we were talking about stuff. So, Rick, are there aspects of... I remember last time that we all three got together 3 weeks ago, I guess, 2 weeks ago, for I Am Not a Number 17, that you had mentioned watching Once Upon a Time, was it, along with Fallout, as like a feature?
Well, I mean, that is one way of doing it, isn't it? They obviously do follow on from each other. You can't have one without the other. One interesting production part is that, I don't know if Tracy's aware of this, Once Upon a Time was actually the 6th episode produced. It was held back for a year and then was put as the penultimate episode. It originally was going to be the end of season 1, when there was never a season 2, of course. So it was actually held back for a year. So if there was a bit of a disconnect between Once Upon a Time and Fallout, it's because there was a year in between when each episode was made.
Yeah, but you did mention viewing the both of them as kind of a feature before.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah,
the show, right?
I don't see any issue with people doing that. Because the natural thing when you finish the end of Once Upon a Time is to then think, well, I want to know what happens next. That's what people were screaming at their TV when they watched the series for the first time, because it ends with, what do you desire? I desire number 1. Well, I'll take you. And then the end credits come up. Well, these days you can binge watch things, can't you? And you put the next episode on straight away. Back when it was on originally, you had to wait a week.
And then, the Butler and number 6, or The Prisoner, go to his apartment, and it closes automatically, just like the doors in the village, which is basically a statement that we are all in the village. We are all number 6. We are all prisoners of our own device or because of society. And that I think one of the points is the sooner you get over that, the easier things are going to be for you. What do you think about that, Rick?
Yeah, I think very fair summation. I don't have any argument with that particularly. I never saw it in the 60s. Tracy, did you? Forgive me if I'm making you give away your age. When did you first?
I think I first saw it in the summer of '69. That's what I would have guessed. It might have been a year or two earlier, but I always thought it was the very end.
Just made a really bad song go off in my head.
I didn't see it till the 80s, so I saw it in a very different kind of scenario to that. So I saw it in the kind of throes of the kind of the Reagan kind of era.
Me too.
It's not the Cold War as such. It was kind of the end of that kind of era. Whereas you saw it kind of at the height of the Cold War. When you saw it in the 60s, did you feel that it had a message for you, or did you not take that from it? Because I know kind of we talked about it does now, 50 years on, we can see what they were trying to say. When you
Tracy,
first
you were
really
pretty young when you saw it when it was on, right?
Yeah, I was about 10, 9 or 10.
I was 10 when I first saw it too, funnily enough.
But you know what, guys? I'm firmly convinced, something I've always believed, that it was the perfect time period for its debut. Because just the colorful world of what was in those days, everything was so psychedelic. And The Prisoners, definitely in my mind, really plays into that. Would not have played anywhere near that if it came out 10 or 20 years later, or even a few years later. It was the perfect time for it. And also, you know what? Because of like 2001, the movie, suddenly a whole new range of sort of science fiction that people believe could soon become science fact, that also plays well for The Prisoner, because a lot of the, gadgetry in the show, especially thinking of Rover, but a lot of things, even sliding doors that open and close without being pulled on, that was all something people could accept. And if it had waited, it had come even a little bit earlier, it might have seemed really too out there, even for The Prisoner. But the way things went, it really actually was a perfect time for it. And also, Rick, I want to emphasize that watching this show with you guys has in no way lessened my feeling for The Prisoner and how brilliant it was and how worth watching it is. And the fact that I came into this thinking in my own head, oh, The Prisoner is pretty notorious for the last 2 episodes just being so out there that it kind of damages the brand. But I don't really feel that way anymore. I mean, I do feel still that it didn't exactly work, but I really appreciate you pointing out that it was a worthwhile effort, and it was one of the only ways you could go. So, I'm thinking like a stupid ex-showrunner right now, but we were talking earlier, Johnny Rivers' song. If I, was going to go on to the 17th show, I think the jukebox should have played Secret Agent Man just for 5 seconds or something. Kind of
you could have thrown that in there.
Itself,
yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would have done. But it's been a totally enjoyable experience doing this show with you guys. mainly because you both are either incredibly knowledgeable about the show, or you've thought it through so deeply that you're bringing out interesting points. So it's been a lot of fun, I can tell you that.
It has. And the
Yeah,
fun,
I really enjoyed it, and it's
And
been
the
an
audience,
honor having you
the
here.
audience has also made
Very
great
true.
comments too.
yeah, we have one of the greatest audiences on YouTube for sure. And the fun
Yeah.
continues next week. We'll have a watch party of Colony 3, which was the prototypical episode of The Prisoner from the previous series, Danger Man, in 5.1 surround sound and beautiful HD, newly remastered. And this is the, this is the URL that you'll need. Now, the important thing to remember is because we're all going to watch this together, everybody will begin at 2 p.m. Central instead of 3 p.m. Central when the show normally starts. The show will start at 3 p.m. Central, and then we'll discuss Colony 3. And then the following week, we're going to do the same thing with Ice Station Zebra. And that's when I Am Not a Number will end. But this is the last episode of this show that will be discussing The Prisoner. So I wanted to make sure that everybody got that URL, and so that we could all watch the episode together. And as I mentioned, it's in HD. It looks beautiful. It's one of the 2 episodes of Danger Man that Network put on the 50th anniversary set of Blu-rays for The Prisoner. And I think a good time will be had by all. So keep your eyes open for that. Brian Hepburn asks, are you going to cover other series? Life on Mars may work for this format.
Before we get off Ice Station Zebra, what percentage of people that watch in a week, whenever it's going to be, you think will be very familiar with that film? Or do you think a large percentage has never seen it before?
You know, it depends for me, because for me, Ice Station Zebra has always been must-see viewing. I think that it's worth having a watch party over because, first of all, it's a great film. Second of all, I think Rick has mentioned this before, that many people have commented that Patrick Mcgoon's character in Ice Station Zebra is basically John Drake. And of course, the other corollary here is that Patrick Mcgoon left the set of The Prisoner to go to the United States and film his parts of Ice Station Zebra, and then came back and was able to film, I think, the beginning and the ending of the episode that came after the one that he skipped.
Well, Gil, you were kind of reading my mind because I was wondering how much of the audience knows how similar his character in Ice Station Zebra is to the Drake slash prisoner. Because it's like if you took the prisoner and put him into this, sprawling movie about the North Pole, it is pretty much this character. He's a secret agent, but a very similar personality. So I think people really get a kick out of that if they haven't seen it before.
Yeah, my brother says that he saw it in the theater when it first came out, and it was huge when it opened. Greg 2600 says, ironically, I saw that movie for the first time a few months ago on the Turner Classic Movies app. And again, my brother mentions it has Rock Hudson, Ernest Borgnine. It has Jim Brown.
Jim Brown?
Yeah, it's a huge, huge film. And that's why we're going to watch it last and watch Colony 3 first, because I think there's going to be a lot to talk about for both of these watch parties. But I think Ice Station Zebra is something that we're going to find that we have a lot of questions and things to discuss.
It's guaranteed fun for people. It's so many things to look for. Because like I said, I've never seen Danger Man. So just for that reason, I'm very excited about it.
If I thought you had time to watch Danger Man, I would buy you the set.
It's awfully nice.
But I don't know that that you have that kind of time. I mean, it's for
I make time.
It's 4
I make time
seasons
for
of
that.
26 episodes each, right, Rick?
There's 86 episodes of Danger Man altogether. There's 39 30-minute episodes where Mcgoon plays Drake as a kind of CIA-type American transatlantic agent. They're 30-minute long stories, very fast-paced. And there's a further 40-something episodes, which are hour-long episodes, where he's very much a British secret agent. And they're almost two different series. The first season of Danger Man, and then what then became Secret Agent, the hour-long episodes, quite different to each other, but equally enjoyable, just for different reasons. I think you'd get a lot out of watching them, Tracy. But as Cardinal Sin says, how much time you'd have to watch them all is the big question.
I'll make time for that, guys. Believe me, I'm very curious about it. I might take you up on that one, Gil.
Sure. I mean, if you'll watch it, I'll send you the set. Michael Beacom has mentioned in the chat, I beg to differ regarding Ice Station Zebra. After he gets on board, the first scene we see is where Mr. Jones almost shoots a man for waking him. John Drake pulling a gun as a reflex.
Yeah, I agree with Michael Beacom. Although I've mentioned before that people have said that the two characters are similar, I don't see that either, because I think there's one point in Ice Station Zebra, without giving any plot away, where he seems pleased with the idea of killing someone. John Drake would never have been pleased at the idea of someone being killed.
Yeah, but guys, you've got to remember, I've never seen Danger Man.
No, of course not.
So maybe
exactly.
what I said
I wasn't knocking you.
Yeah, it wasn't accurate.
Knocking you at all, Tracy.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying anyone was knocking me, but I'm just saying I don't have a reference point.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, what I was thinking of more guys.
People say they're the same character. Even the reverse the initials. John Drake, JD. David Jones, DJ. JD, DJ. People do say they're the same character. I'm not one of those, and it sounds like Michael Beacom is with me on that. But I'll be very interested to see, once you've seen Danger Man, whether you do see a correlation between number 6, John Drake, and the secret agent from Ice Station Zebra. Whether you're like me and see them all as different, or whether you're like a lot of people and think there's a lot of similarities there. It's hard when it's the same actor playing all three. Especially if it's
what I was thinking. What I was thinking more of, guys, honestly,
when you see the film All Night Long, which is a jazz movie interpretation of Othello, and Patrick Mcgoon is manipulating all the other people in the film, and Charles Mingus is in it, and Dan Brubaker is in it. It's an amazing film. I can't recommend it enough. It's a completely different character. I mean, first of all, he sounds American, and I was listening for one accent or another. So, Rick, I get what you're saying about the transatlantic thing, but he's basically this Iago type figure where he's just manipulating everyone. And nobody really figures it out until the end. And I guess I've given away the entire film there, but it's really worth a watch. I really recommend it.
Well, guys, the main thing that I was cueing in on about the similarity between the two characters. I don't know any other actor that has quite the sense of establishing anger, intensity, rage that Mcgoon does. I mean, I used to talk to my wife about that. Yeah, I mean, we just that one scene where he's walking down the hallway right when he's about to resign. I mean, he just channels this look of fury, and I can't think of anybody that does it better than him.
I'm not sure how much of that
scene.
is channeling and how much of that is just his regular personality.
Maybe.
There's a great scene in Ice Station Zebra, Tracy, that you might remember where Mcgoon's character thumps the table in anger in Ice Station Zebra. And then about 2 minutes later, Rock Hudson tries to do exactly the same thing. And
I know.
Poles apart.
You're so right.
Absolutely
You're so right.
Rock Hudson, it's almost like a wet lettuce, isn't it?
And Rock Hudson is trying really hard to simulate the same rage, and he pounds his fist in the desk. And I remember thinking exactly what you are. Just, God, that's night and day, you know? And Mcgoon just had an ability to create that rage, you know, almost the drop of a hat. He does it so often in The Prisoner. You can just sense how much
I think that's why we all identify so much with the number 6 character, because if we were imprisoned for, you know, for something we hadn't done, essentially, which is what the show's about, really, you know, innocent and imprisoned and want to escape, I think we would have that inner rage. And I think Mcgoon captures that so brilliantly. That raw emotion that we would probably all be having if we were in the situation that he was in. Now you've come to the end of all 17 episodes, Tracy. Did you have any other questions about any other aspects of the series that we haven't had a chance to chat about? Because I'm always fascinated by your writer's perspective and the fact that you've been there, done it, and created a show as Patrick did. And whether you, having now seen the series, have any other questions that you haven't had answered?
I think, honestly, most of the questions that I'm left with, because we have covered a lot of ground, I'm more curious about Mcgoon, the man, and certain things about his real existence than really the questions about plots on The Prisoner. I'm just kind of, I still find Mcgoon, the more that I learn about him, I keep finding out things, mostly through you, of course, Rick, that surprise me. You know, the answer about him seeing himself as an American, that surprised me. The answer about him being a jazz fan, that surprised me. More I learn about him, he's such a complicated guy. And I'm also more curious about the things about his family. Like, I'm very curious what his daughter was like, whether she looked like him, whether she liked the philosophy of The Prisoner the way we all did. I'm curious to learn more about him. And I don't even know that much about his last days. I think I told you that when I was getting ready to have my meeting with him.
Go ahead.
I'll just finish real quick. When I was getting ready to have my meeting with him, I was really sternly warned by somebody that knew him that he was a really heavy drinker and that he had a matchbox type of temper, that he could really lose it. And in a nicer framework, they said he just doesn't suffer fools gladly. But the fact that they said that he had become sort of an isolationist and a drinker, I remember being really warned about that. So when I went into my meeting with him, which remember happened unexpectedly, I knew it was a possibility for the near future. Then suddenly it was there. He was walking into my office. And, you know, he was a very intimidating guy in a way, but, you know, you could also see within a few minutes, he was also a big time thinker and actually a very nice man.
Yeah.
So,
and I think whoever said to you that he doesn't suffer fools gladly was absolutely spot on, and that's why you got on well with him. Once he got past that first 5 or 10 minutes where he would test out who he was with, if he realised that that person was on a level that he could communicate with, from all intents and purposes, he was a lovely guy. I know so many people that worked with Patrick and won't have a bad word said about him. Yes, he could sometimes lose his temper, but that was only with people who weren't up to the standards that he expected of them. So, there were stories about him, several people on The Prisoner where he sacked them, directors that he sacked on their first day in the job or whatever. That might sound harsh, but he did that because they weren't up to the standards he expected of them. Everyone that worked their socks off for him and worked for him, even if it was a small role they were doing, he was immensely. I got an email once from someone that used to work in his local bank, and every day he'd come in and he'd pay money in or pay checks in or whatever, and at the end of the week he'd buy the girl behind the counter a chocolate bar.
Oh,
thank you for doing for looking after his money every week when he came into the bank. He had a really nice side to him. If people did for him what he expected of them, he was such a nice guy, and you get that from his daughter. His daughter is such a warm friend. His eldest daughter, he's actually got 3 daughters. His eldest daughter, such a lovely, warm human being. There was no way that she could be that way if her father wasn't.
Does she look like him?
Sorry?
Can you see his face?
Does she look like him?
Can you see his face and her face? Do they look similar?
Not massively. I mean, she. If you could go on to Google when we're finished, Tracy, she's an actress. She was in a Columbo episode with Patrick and a film with Patrick.
Oh, wow.
Catherine Mcgoon. So you'll get some pictures up on the internet, I'm sure, or Cardinal Sin can maybe send you some. And
I personally don't think that they look alike.
You really do need to see this In My Mind film, Tracy, because Catherine is interviewed on that. It's really interesting.
I really want to see that.
And Tracy, before you go, after the show is over, hang out with me backstage for just 1 minute so I can confirm your information and make sure everything is hunky-dory.
Sounds great. And just to tell the general audience too, as Gil knows, I was given some pretty confidential information today that there are some major steps forward about the UFO mystery that have just taken place, I think, in the last couple of days. And I've been told to watch the news very closely in the near coming future. And I don't know a lot of what it is, but it's very significant. I know that Lou Elizondo has been in Washington, D.C. much of this last week and is telling me there are hugely significant things that are going to be ahead in the near future. So for everybody, keep an eye out for that stuff if it interests you not at all. If it doesn't interest you at all, I don't blame you. But if you're interested, pretty significant stuff.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to follow. Rick, I wanted to ask you if there's anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk about. And Greg 2600 says, Gil, has Tracy heard any more Sliders convention details?
God. Sliders convention. Oh yeah, I thought you were just asking me about the reboot. Yes, it's happening in June, I believe. And I'll try to come in with some more specific information for you guys. I know Clivat has agreed to come, and John Rhys Davies, I'm sure, is going to agree to come. The biggest question would be about Jerry O'Connell, only because I haven't heard confirmation. I don't know any reason he wouldn't come. So now Sabrina's a different story. She lives in Africa now, apparently. She's not acting anymore. So whether she'd be as willing to hop on a plane, I don't know that for sure yet. But it's definitely, apparently the regathering of everybody is going to happen.
Cool. Well, definitely.
And I'll try to be more
to more about that.
Yeah, and I'll try to be more specific the next time we meet here, okay?
And that's going to be on Long Island, is that right?
Yes.
Or Pittsburgh?
No, Long Island.
Okay.
Long Island.
Greg 2600 says, "Wow, a great exciting news. Sabrina lives in British Columbia now."
Oh, is that right?
That's
hadn't
what
heard
Greg
that.
2600 says.
Or maybe she'd be gettable for this. I'll try to look into it.
Yeah. And Rick, anything you'd like to talk about to sort of wrap up the series?
Not at all. Just that it's been a genuine pleasure to spend time with you and spend time with Tracy. The thing about The Prisoner is that there aren't any right or wrong answers, and sometimes I know I can get very passionate about how I feel about the series. But apart from production facts, nothing I say is any more true or any more real or any more correct or accurate than anybody else's interpretation of The Prisoner. That's what makes The Prisoner such a great show, is we all have our own interpretations of it. And sometimes I come out with mine and I wax lyrical for minutes on end and bore everybody to tears with what I think about
Not
The
at
Prisoner.
all.
That's
Not
just
at
my
all.
own personal thing. And I think the reason we're here 55 years on is that Patrick created something that we can all have an opinion about. And it doesn't matter what that opinion is. It doesn't matter whether you think it's garbage or whether you think it's brilliant. He's given us something to discuss. And if he hadn't have done that, the show would have been forgotten about in 1968, and we wouldn't be sat here all these years later talking about it and talking about the themes that underlie it. So it's just been such a pleasure. Cardinal Sin, it's so important that you did this. So important that you're bringing the show to new audiences and getting people together to talk about the show. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of it, and to meet and speak with Tracy every week has been a genuine honor and one that I will always cherish. So thank you so much. And to all the
Back
listeners,
at you, brother. It's been
to all
wonderful
the
having you on
listeners
the show. You're
thank you.
so
To all the listeners who
knowledgeable.
typed in the chat as well. Thank you.
You're so knowledgeable about the show and about Patrick, and I have to admit that so far, when I've been cramming for this show by watching The Prisoner, I haven't watched it with the info text that you wrote on, but I'm going to do a complete rewatch of The Prisoner, and I'm going to have your info text on for every episode.
Oh, great. Well, I hope you enjoy it. It was a real pleasure. I mean, without that set, we wouldn't have learnt about each other. It was such a privilege to work with Network on that set, with the restoration and the info text and all the other aspects to it, all the special features. It was such an honor, and I'm so pleased that you've got a copy of that set, because it really is the most beautiful rendition of the series that you can have. And hopefully you'll find the info text interesting. And let me know if you do. Let me know if you spot anything amiss, and let me know if you find anything interesting.
Absolutely, I will. And I just want to remind folks about the watch party.
So excited.
I've kind of gone on and on about this, but I want to make sure that we get it in at the end. And this is the link here for the watch party. And again, we'll be having that watch party at 2 p.m. Central, which is an hour earlier than we're usually here. And then once all of us are done watching the episode, then we'll be on again at 3 o'clock Central to discuss it. Michael Beacom says, "I'd like to thank all three of you, Tracy, Rick, and Cardinal
Thank you,
Sin.
guys.
These Wednesday sessions have been a highlight of the week, and it's been so rewarding re-immersing into the show. Thanks again."
Thank you, Michael. I've enjoyed his contributions very much.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys in a week.
Yeah.
Right. And Tracy, hang on, and
Yeah.
I'll talk to you in the back stage. And Rick,
Okay.
again, wonderful to have
Go
you
on,
here.
Rick.
You'll have
Thank
no
you. Thanks so
problem
much,
joining
guys.
us.
See you both next week.
You'll have no problem joining us for the watch party, right?
Yeah, I'll be there with bells on. Can't wait. See you next week.
All right, sounds
Great.
good.
Great.
Thanks
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
And
Thank you.
we will be starting at 2 p.m. and then jump into the chat at 3. So it's Cardinal Sin out.